Hi guys, and welcome to Sustain This with Vivobarefoot. I am your host, Emma Foster Gearing. Thank you so much for joining us last year. We had a great time and we had over 10,000 downloads and a lot of love. We're going to keep things going this year, and we're starting things off with the incredible Ed Stafford, who is a British explorer and holds a Guinness World Records for walking the length of the Amazon. He talks to us about his new YouTube series that he's launching every day to help us get through this period of lockdown, all about bushcraft skills, and he's just a genuinely good dude. So if you like what you hear, get in touch with us on social or email us at sustainthis@vivobarefoot.com. Right. Hey Ed, thanks for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, lovely to be here.
And yeah, I mean, it's lockdown, I think tier 5 in the UK now, from memory.
It's not tier 5, it's just lockdown. It's just entire national, utter, total lockdown.
My family lives home in Australia, and they are currently being forced to wear masks for the first time in all of this. So yeah, so they're having a little kind of, our freedoms are being taken away from us moment. And meanwhile, we've been doing it for 12 months.
Yeah, I know, it's tricky, isn't it? Like, it's all well and good getting motivated to sort of reorganize your life. And, when lockdown 1 happened, everyone's like, wow, new landscape. And the positive people went, wow, new opportunities. And like, I could learn Mandarin, or I could do this, that, and the other, or I could start a podcast or whatever it is. And then almost a year later, we're going, oh my God, we've got to do this again. And we've got to homeschool our kids again. And we've got and I think it is. I think there's a few cracks starting to show in a lot of people who are normally, very, very sound. And I think it's not surprising, really, is it?
So you've got 2 new little ones, right? You've got some new life in the world. How are you handling all that with lockdown?
It's busy, Laura's pretty much dealing with the twins all the time, so she's just taken out of the equation, I suppose. So you just end up doing every bedtime with Ran, and all the washing up and most of the cooking and all of the other stuff that he's doing that you both share every day. But I mean, crikey, we're in the same boat as so many other people, and it's just, it's a challenge, isn't it? But I think, I don't know, as long as you don't let it get to you. I think for me, if I get into a mode where I'm blaming other people or moaning, I really use that as a little alarm bell in my own head. If I'm complaining about somebody else, it's normally because I'm not in a good place. And it's a rubbish space to be in, isn't it? When you feel like the world is to blame and there's nothing you can do about it, because then you're powerless, aren't you, I suppose? And
I heard someone say today, it's time we stop pretending like this is all going to go away in a few months' time and just learn like how to live and how to enjoy life, and expect it to be around for another couple of years at least, and kind of get on with it and make the best of it, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I haven't, obviously, I pay the mortgage from doing TV work, and I haven't actually filmed anything since December 2019 now, so over a year. And we've got plans to take a loan out to invest in glamping pods, to put in the field behind our house. And we need to take it seriously. It's the things are different, and we need to pay the bills, and therefore, every opportunity that you've got to take, haven't you? Really, it's
sure.
I mean, it is, weirdly, I do like to, and I'm not being fickle, and I'm not disrespecting anybody who's suffering and suffered from COVID, obviously, but you have to kind of treat it like a game almost. It's like, okay, new set of rules. How do we do this? How are we going to make our life fun and happy, and how are we going to provide, and how are we going to cope with homeschooling and all of this sort of thing? Because if you let it get to you, if you do go into that moaning mode, then you've lost already, haven't you? Sort of.
For sure. My husband and I actually gave up our rental contract, and we are currently doing Airbnb life.
How are you? Wow.
An Airbnb in Gloucestershire.
Okay.
And we're doing long-term stays, and all the owners are like desperate for long-term people to be in them. We don't have to pay any bills.
Right.
Our monthly costs are about a half of what we were paying for like a crappy rental in Slough.
Yeah.
And we do a different walk every single day. And, it's, we're making the best of it, guiltily having a great time while everyone else has got kids. Sorry. How are you making it work with the kids then? How are you kind of structuring your day?
I think, to be honest, it was structured during lockdown 1. It's not structured now.
So you're not structuring it.
No, I mean, it's. Yeah. I think the thing that quite a lot of people realised in lockdown 1 is if you try and juggle everything at the same time, then that's not going to work, is it? You don't work as well, you don't get as much done, and your children get sort of fobbed off, constantly nagging at you, and then they're in a bad place, and it just all deteriorates and spirals. And so what we did in lockdown 1 was we gave each other, Laura and I, my wife, gave each other 3 hours of the day, so it's completely to do whatever we want. So that might be going on a run, it might be doing some emails or work, it might be doing something in the garden, and anything that was just didn't involve looking after the kids. And the other one obviously did all that sort of parenting role for those 3 hours, and that did work. Actually, that was quite a nice way of doing it. I mean, you just do have to condense your entire day to 3 hours, but then you become more efficient, don't you? You bizarrely work out that you can do it all in 3 hours as well. So
making me feel really guilty.
Really? What? Because you don't have children?
So Ed, tell us about what you're doing on YouTube.
Well, yeah, I suppose one of the things that I decided to do, and it was lockdown 1, about halfway through lockdown 1, again, thinking outside the box, what can we do now? Not working in TV. I did a podcast, put a lot of time and effort into it, but I think, the world has got a lot of podcasts now, so it didn't fly, I've got to be honest, but not everything you start succeeds, I suppose, does it? But the other thing I did was doing these online bushcraft videos, and when this and so all summer we've been filming these online bushcraft videos, and although I've got my own survival show on TV and stuff, I've learned so much this summer by working firsthand with Stephen Hanton, who's my partner in all of this. He's just this wealth of knowledge, 21 years of instructing bushcraft. And anyway, we then both put our heads together at the beginning of this lockdown and went, do you know what, how successful was Joe Wicks in terms of the homeschooling and stuff like that? We've now both been through a whole summer of filming bushcraft lessons. Why don't we put out a forest schools session for kids, basically for free, 10 o'clock every morning on our YouTube channel, Online Bushcraft. And so that's what we decided to do. And already the pickup's been amazing. The Independent got in contact today and said they wanted an article for the weekend. And it's just been phenomenal, really. So
why do you think people are engaging with it so much now?
For one reason or another, there seems to be a massive sort of collective desire to reconnect with nature. A lot of companies, I think, have picked up on it in terms of rewilding and stuff like that, but it's genuine. It really is going on there. I think, it takes a sort of scare on this scale to make people reevaluate what matters in life, really. And I suppose that's doing the things that you love with the people you love in the places you love, and quite often that's outdoors as well. In a world where we're being confined and constricted, and we feel a little bit oppressed, going outdoors is a very easy, natural reset. And obviously it also doesn't cost very much money, and it falls within the parameters of what we're all allowed to do as well, which is handy. So I think it's a real positive. Sort of things like forest schools have been sort of ticking along in the background, sort of at a very niche level for the last 15, 20 years. But I think they're now going to come to the forefront. I think we're going to see a wave of people really wanting their children to have a very close relationship with nature, which is great, really.
So for my understanding, what actually is a forest school, and how are you tying that into what you're teaching?
Well, there's lots of different names for it, isn't there? Bushcraft is I suppose, one of the terms that's been bandied around over the last 10 years or so, since Ray Mears, I suppose, brought it to this country. But it's just outdoor skills. Let's face it, it's outdoor skills, and we're branding it forest skills because of that sort of connection to forest schooling, and people get that. People understand what forest schooling is, and it's just everything that involves the outdoors. It could be learning to put the appropriate clothing on so you don't get cold, wearing wool next to your skin so that you're warm rather than cotton, that sort of stuff. It could be lighting fires, it could be building dens, it could be making charcoal pencils so that you can do drawings. It's literally anything that, I suppose, I think we all got a bit bored of going on a dog walk at some stage of one of the lockdowns, and that is what you're limited to if you don't have any knowledge of the outdoors, because you go outside, you go on a walk, and then you go, right, well, I'm sort of done with the outside now, and then you go inside again. And so I suppose these are the sort of skills that allow you to be more comfortable and therefore stay out there longer. So whether that's camping or cooking outside, or a myriad of different things, learning different knife uses, and the list is literally endless. It's everything that you can do outside. So, and I think a lot of us who do these things take it for granted that everyone knows how to light a fire, and they definitely don't. My wife was saying today, because Monday's lesson was making bannock bread, which is bannock twisters with chocolate chips in them over the fire. And she's like, but you didn't even go into how to make a fire. And I was like, everyone can make a fire. And no, they can't. No, they really, really can't. And so I think it's not assuming that everyone has got those skills, or even that people know how to dress up properly. Because, I went camping with my little boy, wild camping, on the day before Christmas Eve, and up in the Peak District. And you know how wild camping is tolerated, but it's not strictly legal. It's sort of out of sight, out of mind. And just before I went, everyone was like, "You're crazy. Why are you taking a 3-year-old to go wild camping? And it's freezing cold." And I'm like, yeah, but that's the point. That's what makes it quite adventurous, isn't it? So we're walking, we packed up our stuff, walked past a million signs that said no camping, walked up this hill with a huge rucksack on. My little boy, I'm telling him to be quiet, but he's just saying, "We're going camping," to every single person that we pass. And then he was probably awake till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, see, I saw the photo on your social of him asleep in the tent. Right. And I was like, okay, wow, that's amazing. Imagine being that young. And
that was the point where I ended the social media, right? So that was about 6:30 in the evening. I then had a really smug couple of hours in my sleeping bag reading, and then he woke up about 11 and was awake till 4 in the morning. And we literally, at one point, he was in my sleeping bag and we were both shivering. And then at one point we were cooking bananas and custard in the tent. But, it was an ordeal, but it was also an adventure. It was literally so much fun. And almost every day since then, he's going, "Daddy, when are we going camping? Daddy, when are we going camping?" And he just loved it because it was, I don't know, it was visceral. It was real. It wasn't sitting in front of a TV. It was doing a sort of adventure with his dad. So, I just can't bang on about it enough. How I suppose.
Well, you must be fairly successful about encouraging other people and inspiring them to get into it, because you've got so many people now that. Do you find it's a new type of person that's engaging with you, or like is it like someone who perhaps before all of this just kind of couldn't find the time to get outside, and now they have it, and now they're just desperate to find out kind of how to take that on?
I think it's definitely becoming more mainstream. Bear Grylls took the Scouts in a far more mainstream manner. It went from a very geeky organization, which was all about saying dib, dib, dib and tying knots and stuff, into, the home of adventure. And I think he did amazing things for that organization. And I think, traditionally bushcraft, or, the skills that we're teaching in these forest skills lessons, has been a sort of, I call them the double olive brigade, with those guys who turn up to the bushcraft show with sort of an ex-army top on and olive trousers, and they've got about 4 knives hanging from their belt that's also got emergency rations in case the world ends, and all of this sort of malarkey. And they're an extraordinary bunch of bushcraft geeks, let's face it. But it's not just them anymore. It's families, it's dads who feel that they're not equipped with the skills that they need to be able to teach their kids this sort of stuff. So they're getting interested and doing it with their children, and mums obviously as well. And I just think it is something that thankfully is just becoming a lot more mainstream now.
Yeah. A friend of mine says that his secret to surviving lockdown with his kids is that, I probably shouldn't say this on here actually, although I'm sure it won't go that viral.
We just started.
Is that he's going onto websites where they buy property with woodlands.
Okay.
He books a viewing of the property. And there isn't any estate agents or anything that go with them anymore. So you just basically get given like a 2-hour time slot that you can go and walk around this property and go and like see the land.
Yeah.
It's basically private. You would never have access to it. And you can like spend a whole bunch of time in these woodlands and like someone's mansion estate.
I think you've just outed him. So that's not going to happen anymore, is it?
It was genius.
Yeah, it is genius. Yeah, no, it's nice. We test drove a Aston Martin once on pretty much the same premise. We just wanted to go and have a drive.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So what can we expect to see from all the series then? What's the type of stuff you're going to cover?
Well, on Monday, I was cooking bannock twisters, which is this bread that you make just using handfuls of the substance, so no measuring or anything like that, and then mix it all up. Smash up a chocolate bar, put that in, and you twist it around a stick and toast it over a fire. That was quite good fun. Tuesday, Stephen, who's my partner in all of this, he was teaching people basic knife skills, and I think it is really important, even though this is aimed at children, to introduce children safely to knives. I think that's the only way that they're ever going to be competent with them. And so making tent pegs, just carving working tent pegs out of using a knife out of wood, obviously. Wednesday, what did I do yesterday? Mine's gone blank. Survival hacks, yes, making things like, you can make, if you get a needle and you rub a magnet along the length of a needle, you can magnetize it. And if you then get a bucket of water, you can balance the needle on a leaf and it will spin around and point to north. Little hacks like that, which are so much fun. Exactly. Who would have thought you could make a needle into a compass?
That's not bushcraft. That's just magic.
Yeah. And then there's firelighting, there's building dens, there's all sorts of activities to do when you go on walks. When you see in winter, it's sometimes, because there's not lots of berries and lots of flowers and stuff like that, certainly in the UK, the landscape can seem a bit barren and you don't necessarily have loads of animal interactions. But what there are loads of, especially when it's really muddy, footprints, animal prints and tracks. And so one of the things is to basically get a tin, and so it's a cylinder really, but you can take a yogurt pot and chop the bottom off it, put it over the animal track, put plaster of Paris in it, and take casts of the animal track, so that you can then take that home and paint it or whatever. Again, and the nice little things for kids, but it's a nice way to interact with an animal and start learning what's a deer print and what's a pig print or whatever, or what's a dog print and what's a cat print, and the difference between having retractable claws and non-retractable claws. And suddenly it then, when my little boy walks around now, I mean, he's constantly thinking that they're reindeer prints, but they're just deer prints, but it has been Christmas. But yeah, he's interacting. He knows the different animals and stuff that have been walking by. So he's got a greater understanding of nature than if he didn't have that sort of background knowledge, I suppose.
Oh, by the way, what you can hear in my background is someone chopping firewood. So while we're on topic.
how very natural and
So I'm reading a book at the moment called The Well-Gardened Mind, and
okay.
It talks all about I'm sure you probably know it, but it talks all about the importance of developing your left and right brain by being out in nature and touching and feeling things, and just like the senses that you can achieve from being around plants and seeing the changes of the seasons and acknowledging that, and then how that influences your mental health, and how they use like gardening as rehabilitation in kind of jail scenarios or even mental health scenarios where someone might have PTSD or something like that. And even though it's stuff I kind of knew already, it makes it really material, and I suddenly like go out in nature and I'm seeing it in a different way, and I'm trying to embrace it in a different way. I'm trying to breathe it in a completely different way. And I think even, it sounds like what you're doing here is stuff that you might kind of know, like making a fire, but it's just like reminding you that you can do it now, and you have the time and you have the space to do stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are increasing reports. I mean, people talk to me about all the increasing reports. I haven't read them at all. That do provide scientific evidence that going out into nature has got a clinical benefit certainly for your mental health. But I just go off the way it makes me feel, really. And I think I don't think I'm unique in the fact that I mean, even if I'm down in London, which doesn't happen very much anymore, but if I come off the train in Market Harbour and you just step off the train, breathe in fresh air, and you go, I'm back in the countryside again. And it just, somehow it is a reset. If my little boy is screaming and crying inside the house and you can't think of any way to calm him, just take him outside the back door and just something to do, the breeze crossing his face, and he's good as gold in like 30 seconds or so. And I just, for me it's anecdotal. It's just knowing that I'm a better version of myself outdoors. I've never been one for phone calls. I've never really been one for sitting in front of a computer and then
your whole family is such a great example of like how to really live by all these values. Like your wife is also quite the outdoor extraordinaire, right?
Well, yeah, no, I mean she's done amazing things really for her age. At the age of 23, she was she led an expedition to the Essequibo River in Guyana. I think she was 24 actually. Essequibo River in Guyana, which was three girls. Pip Stewart and Ness Knight as well went along, and no one had even ever been to the source of the Essequibo River, and it's the third longest river in South America that flows out into the ocean anyway. And yeah, and they found the source. Took them 3 weeks of jungle hacking with machetes, and then another 2 months of kayaking down the river with indigenous guys that they found near the source. So I mean, yeah, phenomenal expedition, and I think, yeah, I mean, Laura's massively into, I suppose, giving women the confidence to know that they've got the ability to do all the sort of things that men can do, and I think that was very much that type of expedition. Although it is interesting now with our second lot of twins that they're now older than they were when Laura went on that. No, in fact, they're approaching the same age as they were when Laura went on that first expedition when Ram was a baby. And I don't think she would do it this time round. She's so attached to them that I think at the beginning it was I may be a mum, but I'm going to sort of defiantly carry on adventuring, and yeah, no, she's a bit more mumsy at the moment, but I'm sure that will change. I mean, I think you get different hormones, don't you, pumped through your body whilst you're actually nurturing and breastfeeding, obviously, your children. It's an instinctually natural thing to want to be with them all of the time, but not that any of us can go on expeditions at the moment anyway. Because
I mean, but it's just a thing. I think I love the idea of like your kids growing up and realizing what their parents have done. Just like, set the bar so high.
It was fun actually. We on that expedition, I took Ran because Laura, although she was being very strong and deciding to do this expedition, after about 6 weeks of the expedition, she's just like, every time I get into my hammock, I start thinking about Ran. It's like literally a knife being driven through my heart. And so we organised. Basically, I took Ran out, and he was 8 months old at the time, so he could just sit up, but he couldn't stand. And we landed in Georgetown, hired a twin plane Cessna, flew into the middle of the jungle, landed on a grass runway, hired indigenous guides, and then went up the river to try and find them and meet them. And she'd got one of these tracking units, and I'd got the same unit, and we could see the things bleeping as we came together on the river. And it was just, I mean, all the guides that we met along the way, the indigenous guys, they were just like, you don't take a baby into the jungle. And I was like flying in the face of all advice, really. And we got this massive insurance package, a couple of million if something went wrong, and we had helicopter backup. But invariably, it was quite an out of the ordinary thing to do, but it was so worth it, and they just had a blissful 3 days or so on the river, whereby which they wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think it gave her, the motivation to continue. And he just had a phenomenal time, literally. I mean, I've never, even though I'd walked the length of the Amazon at this point, I'd never seen a jaguar in the flesh before. And we literally just going up the river, there was a jaguar sunbathing on the rocks beside us. And it's just like, oh, my little boy's now seen a jaguar in the wild, which not many people can say. So yeah, I mean, it was extraordinary, but worth it, I think. I just think if you believe in reading your kids bedtime stories at night, because that's a healthy experience and it develops their brains, then how can flying up a jungle river not equally be an incredible, molding experience for them? I think
you're literally living the fairy tales that you're talking to them about. But how do you make that, like, I'm assuming you feel quite passionately about kind of getting more people to realize the importance of kind of raising their kids in this way. How do you plan on scaling that? Like, how do you think you can, how can we open those doors to like more people all around the world? I mean, you've got really global audience, right?
I don't think you need to, right. I mean, it's not like I'm a sort of devout Christian who wants to convert everyone to my religion or anything like that. It's like, I love it and I believe in it, and I think it, there's nothing worse, isn't it? You meet some lovely parents who live in the city perhaps, and their kids are great, but they've never got dirty, and so they come out into the wild and they come on lessons or something like that, and they don't want to get their knees dirty, and then they cry, and you just think, this is such a shame. This is really such a shame, because I think it's a sort of vessel for self-development, actually, these sort of adventures. I think it is. I was a very, I think, unevolved ex-army captain when I came out of the military. I had my own issues, as a lot of us do. And I think for me, adventures have been, I don't know, life in sort of glorious technicolor, life in this really intense manner where you're faced with a problem, you don't have all the answers, and you have to be humbled on numerous occasions and then come up with different solutions and thinking outside the box. And then invariably when you do that, you're growing as a person, aren't you? Because you didn't have all the answers before, and then you work through the problem, and then you do. You can't fail to be constantly growing and getting better at being the best version of you, I suppose. And I think that applies all across the route, from Cub Scouts all the way through to crusty old expeditioners. But I think you never stop learning. Yeah.
I mean, it's a sweeping generalization, but I was really shocked when I moved to the UK, like how much, I guess my generation, I'm just about to turn 32, kind of hadn't been built with that mindset. I mean, in Australia, it's really, really normal for you to like go and jump off a tree and bash your knee up and fall off the front of a bike and have your arm bitten by a shark. Like, I'm not saying it's encouraged, but it's definitely not, it's definitely not something you don't get exposed to. But I definitely started to make friends around me when I moved here and went, whoa, like, come on guys, like, it's okay, it's okay to kind of go get muddy. It's okay to do all this stuff. And we had an experience on the weekend where the Airbnb that we had booked to be in for all of January ended up being a kind of serial killer den. And it was like so awful. And there was miscellaneous bags of meat in the fridge, which I think might have been the guest that left them a bad review before us. So it was just this awful experience. And it was like 3 p.m. on a Sunday night. And we had to just find somewhere to live for all of January. We were calling people, come on, we really need somewhere to live. And it was a really stressful experience. But in the end, Adam and I fended, I know it's like a first world problem, but like we fended through this thing together, and my husband and I, and we ended up in this lovely place, and it's ended up being beautiful. And it was just another kind of notch on the belt. We've learned a ton of lessons, chalk it up, and then, you get on with it and you learn from it and just kind of get on with it. And it was actually really quite fun in retrospect.
I think in this country, one, it's hotter in your country, so it's that step towards going out into the wild isn't quite as ominous. Sometimes it's horizontal sleet in this country, and it's disgusting. But I think it's changing. I do think it's less just your toughened climbers from Yorkshire who sort of rough it. I think it's now more of a family thing, and yeah, as we were saying, I think it's getting a more acceptable thing to do. I think a lot of outdoor clothing gets sort of worn on the tube commuting into work, and people like to have that sort of status. Sure. Yeah, I'd go outdoors a little bit, and most of it probably doesn't, but I think it is changing. And I used to certainly my friends used to, I don't understand what you do going on expeditions, and none of them say that anymore. They all kind of somewhat envious, I suppose, because they're in an office, and it always used to be the same. The story, the question was, when are you going to get a proper job, Ed? When are you going to grow up? And you're like, well, I'm glad I never did, really. Now it's all worked out well in the end.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, so but they did it, didn't they? I mean,
how do you think people are going to respond? Because are you straight after Joe Wicks's indoor workout, and then it's you, right? So indoor to outdoor, you're going to try and get people to suddenly lace up their boots and come outside with you, or?
Well, this is it. You see, we're assuming that most people are going to be watching it indoors, and so we want to have within every lesson, we want to have something that you can do whilst you're indoors. So, for example, the bannock twisters that I mentioned before, you can make all of the bread, and you can mix in the chocolate chips and stuff indoors, and then there'll be an element where I'm reading out shout outs from people and answering questions and stuff while I'm toasting this on the fire. But clearly people aren't going to be toasting it on the fire at the same time, because they're likely to be indoors. And I think that is just one of the, that's one of the hurdles that we had to overcome when we're doing this. Yeah, we want to impart this knowledge, but let's be realistic about what can be achieved. And I think it is important that it's interactive, though, because you don't want to just sit and listen to a lesson that's going to be something that you will do in the afternoon. So every day there's something that the audience can take part in while it's going on. And half the time, things are going wrong and things aren't going to plan. But that's the amusing and fun thing about live broadcasting, isn't it?
Yeah, and from what I've seen of what you've done so far, it's definitely eye candy. I mean, I mean, you two lovely men, of course, but also all of the oceans and the forests and everything. It's like, it's really beautiful scenery and very, very engaging. So
I wonder whether you were going with that.
yeah, it's a lovely program to watch if you're going from Magic Mike to outdoor bushcraft.
Yeah, it's yeah, some of the lessons are taught indoors, some of them are outdoors, but it's skills that you can take outdoors. And you know, from, you know, whittling pieces of wood, for example, and you know, sometimes it's raining and so you can't film outdoors because, you know, the sound quality would be terrible and it just wouldn't work. But yeah, it's all got an outdoor theme, and it's all to encourage people to be outdoors more.
I love it. That's so good. Well, let's leave it on that point. Thanks for joining us. It was really cool to hear what you're doing, and I'm super excited to get involved with it myself. So thanks very much.
Thank you.